Good morning, everyone. I am incredibly excited to be joining you today, where we are going to dive into the final trend from LinkedIn's largest ever survey to verified technology buyers. And if I do say so myself, I find this the most interesting one. Quite honestly, I just found it resonated with me the most. So I'm genuinely excited to share, also intrigued to hear if you feel the same. Then to top it all off, as we reach the conclusion of our webinar series, in this very session, we have the absolute privilege of hosting some of your peers for a virtual panel. Here, we will discuss their own experiences, and you'll have the opportunity to pose your own questions for us all. The good news for you today is you're only going to have to hear from me for the first 15 minutes, short and sweet, and then we will spend the rest of our time with our panel and getting through your questions. But before we get to that, it'll be great if you can drop in the chat who you are, where you're from. Feel free to say hi to everyone. And also, please type any questions you have throughout the short presentation that we'll do our best to answer at the end. So introducing myself, my name is Ben Whedon, and I've been with LinkedIn for about 6 years now. I started off my career as a marketing insights consultant, and I now reside in our key accounts team as a key account director, where I get to work with our largest technology brands every day. So what is this research and trend I want to share? Why does it matter? Why does it have a strange name? Well, as we're more than aware, this year, to put it pretty lightly, has been quite unpredictable. The way we work, how we interact within our own business, how we interact with our customers, these have fundamentally changed. We've had to accelerate our own rates of learning, adaptation, and most importantly, flexibility. And this is why we are coining this as the age of agility. And the aim of our research was to provide us with the insight that can help guide us through this changing world of digital marketing and really help us identify where and how we can win. We surveyed just shy of 6,000 verified technology buyers, equally weighted across company size, sectors, and markets. And for the purpose of today's session, we will be focusing on those responses from the EMEA participants, so it's going to be the most relevant for us. And these respondents had to have participated in a technology buying process within the last 6 months. What our results showed us is there are 5 key trends we need to be aware of and that we need to align against. Some you may know, some may be new, but hopefully they will at least serve as a reminder that we need to be agile in our thinking right now. To recap, these are the 5 trends that we need to be aware of, and combined, they almost tell us to behave, to act, to operate in an environment and manner that is the antithesis of what we've been told before. As marketers, it's about knowing who your customer is and engaging them as quickly and efficiently as possible, delivering the right content at the right time in the hope they choose to do the business with us over others. But it's safe to say the world has changed. It's evolved drastically this past year. Does that mean that it's possible that buying behaviors, the very basis of marketing principles, could have changed too? Our focus today is on the final trend, the anonymous buyer. But not only do we now have more people we need to think about marketing to, we've also found that those individuals in the buying committee are wanting to remain anonymous to you for as long as possible. Technology buying is not on a journey of refinement, instead it's on a journey of reinvention. Now, we're not implying we were having to start from scratch. In fact, quite the opposite. Our aim, like the research title suggests, is how can we help you navigate the change and the reinvention to adapt your own approaches so you can match the agility we're seeing in the marketplace. So onto the anonymous buyer. This is where we have to become comfortable with taking someone who wishes to conduct their research behind closed doors on a journey with our brand that's longer than we might expect. Our data found that this evaluation, this research stage, can last on average for 4 months. And that's a lot of opportunity for them to engage and evaluate you as a potential supplier without you even knowing. But this trend makes sense to me when we think about buyers as what they are, as people. Ever get a phone call from an unknown number or a number you don't recognize? Now, I'm not sure what you're like, but more often than not, my initial thought is not to pick up the phone, it's to let it ring off. It's fear of the unknown, I guess, right? At least it is for me. And actually, when so many things are out of our control right now in the world, when we think about COVID and there is so much uncertainty, it's human nature to want to control our own little worlds, control our own interactions with people or things on the outside. Now, combine this current climate with 2 more things. I'm in my early 30s and I'm from a generation that stops interacting over telephone and we switched to digital texting and messaging as our core means of communication. I've become conditioned to controlling when and how I want to interact with others. To top that off, the internet is part of everyday life, mine and yours. It's our own little pocket encyclopedias where it's easy to find what I need, when I need it, within the confines of my own little social anxieties. So the findings that we're about to explore, that buyers are wishing to remain anonymous to you for longer than ever, it's really not surprising to me, and I don't believe it will be to you either. It's just we can often overlook this, and that can be to our disadvantage. Because in fact, we saw a massive 70% of potential buyers in EMEA alone had already researched your company before reaching out to you. 70%. Now, that doesn't make the demand gen marketers amongst you uncomfortable. I'm not sure what will. But this isn't a negative. This is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to adapt and not think about what we need from our audience, but rather focus on what our audience needs from us. In tactical terms, ungate some of your content. Tech buyers and their facilitators want to do their research in peace. So if we want to maximize the effectiveness of every dollar spent when we're running lead forms and asking for prospect details, think about if we're giving enough ungated content to support their research phase. If we take this on board and have enabled enough freely available content to them in the past, by the time it comes to asking for a more direct line of communication, we'd stack the odds in our favor. Yes, it's the power of intent, but often with intent, we focus too heavily on targeting those who have shown that intent without skewing enough distribution to our awareness and consideration types of content. If we focus on that, not only can we hypothesize that our lead generation of today will be more efficient, but so will our lead generation of tomorrow. And when I think about trends, I always like to just zoom out to general human behavior and see if it makes sense. This is my litmus test. Do you remember the days when we were allowed to leave our houses and go shopping? Shopping for clothes or shoes or even household stuff. Well, my favorite clothes shop is the Shop Reese. Pre-lockdowns, payday would come around, and on a Saturday, I head out to my local shopping centre, grab myself my favorite coffee, skinny milk this time because I'm having a takeaway that night, watching my calories. And I walk into that Reese store and I start sifting through all the rails. I've already noticed that the shop assistant's eyes are on me like vultures. They must mistakenly believe I have more money than I do. I avoid eye contact at every opportunity, and when I can't, I give one of those awkward closed mouth smiles that we all do. And then they walk on over anyway. And what do they ask? Is there anything specific you're looking for or that I can help you with, sir? And what do we timidly say back? Just browsing, thanks. Not always in that voice, but sometimes after that, we stay in the shop. Sometimes it's enough to make us want to scurry out of the shop. How many times have you had that exact same conversation when out shopping? How did it make you feel? Well, B2B marketing isn't actually much different when we strip it back. Say we posted a new white paper or case study. We may have got a good brand name that means we've got someone's attention, except this time we're the vultures. And we're not just asking how we can help. We're asking for your name, your email, and even your phone number. And the brave sometimes go even further. What our research suggests is almost a paradoxical idea that the best way to drive leads is to not focus all our attention on driving leads at all. By allowing more of our content freely available to consume so potential buyers can carry out their research anonymously, we're still driving demand. We're just doing it in a more customer-centric way. So how long do we have to think about supplying ungated content? Well, let's look at the buying journey insights we found. This, of course, will vary company to company based upon complexity. But whatever way we look at it, we're still talking months. In fact, over 40% of buyers take longer than a year to complete a purchase journey. So what does that mean for us? Well, we need an ongoing presence of awareness and content to support this journey, a journey that has large components of research and evaluation phases that buyers are going through right now. And we even ask buyers the average time they spend in each phase of that buying journey. And no matter the phase, the average was still returning answers in the months. This means that our focus should include what we are doing now on a brand level that will influence the success of what we'll be doing next quarter and the quarter after that on a demand level. But what I find really interesting is when we ask tech buyers what stage they were involved in. The highest level of involvement from buyers and buying influencers is in those early stages, in that research stage especially. So to maximize our potential success further down that journey, I'm reinforcing that point once more, that our ability to match the way buyers are telling us that they want to consume content, which is anonymously, will enable us to serve the needs of the largest spread of that buying committee. But notice how the numbers drop off as the journey continues. 1 in 2 decision makers in EMEA are involved in those early stages before dropping off. Now let's combine that with our finding that 70% like to do their research before making themselves known to you. really is becoming comfortable with giving away value up front, because there are influential people who make up your future customers' buying committee who may never be known to you. Don't let those people slip through your hands. In my own personal life right now, I have a situation where I'm one of those 55% that will drop off. My younger brother, he's looking to buy his first house. And for any of you that have been through the process, understanding mortgages for the first time is mind-boggling. So he's asked me to send him a suggestion of providers. Now, I'm not the decision maker or the budget holder, but I'm influencing him and who he picks to a certain degree. Now, knowing I'm not after the mortgage myself, if I'm asked for all of my details or just to get a makeshift calculation or find out more information about what's on offer, I don't actually want to be contacted. I don't want to be inundated with follow-up because it's not actually for me. So I've been sending him the links of those who let me do my research anonymously. This is one of the reasons I mentioned at the start that this trend resonates with me, because I see examples that relate so easily on a general behavioral level across all aspects of life. And it doesn't matter if you're a B2B or B2C marketer, we are in the game of marketing to people. But I also love that it's actionable. From a content perspective, I always talk to brands I consult with about value exchange. If we want the value of a customer details, then I say we need to make sure we're giving explicit value back in exchange through the medium, definitely, of our content. And this research changes the way that I'm now going to talk about that exchange, where we now have to give more earlier to showcase why they should communicate with us in the first place. Now, this doesn't mean we're advising to just give everything away and hope and pray that somewhere down the line we get some leads come through the door. We know that personalization plays a role in successful demand generation. So it's more about our funnel flow or our ecosystem flow, still leveraging the retargeting capabilities to nurture audience journeys and personalize them like you all do. It's just that the nurture side of things has longer periods of ungated content access to maximize our chances of arriving on our customers' shortlists. And that is content you distribute, as well as the content that you're holding on your website. To summarize before we move across to our wonderful panel guest, the anonymous buyer means exactly what it says. Get comfortable with the idea that they may know more about us than we do them, and that this will be the relationship for a longer period of time than we're perhaps used to. So the key thing you can do is make sure you match this behavior by providing opportunity for informed research and help shape their opinions by showcasing your expertise openly in a more customer-centric manner. This will have a knock-on effect in the short term when we think about additional metrics we may want to measure success with. But ultimately, we believe that if we focus on what the customer needs from us, rather than the details we need from them, we can not only capture today's buyers efficiently, but also those buyers of tomorrow. And finally, and most importantly, if you ever call me from a number that I don't recognize, please don't take it personally if I don't pick up. And with that, I want to say thank you for your time. I can see we have lots of great questions here. So let's introduce and pose these to our panel guests and get through them all. Hello, everyone. And now is the time you've been waiting for. This is the bit you've been waiting for. And I'd love to give a massive welcome to our lovely panel guests that we have. I'm very excited for them to join us. From personal experience, I know that these two really know what they're talking about. Now, we already have some questions that have been sent to me in the chat, but please keep sending them in, and we're going to do our best to answer as many as possible for you. So first things first, I'd love for both of you, Karina and Jamil, to introduce yourselves, who you are, where you work. But I'd also like you to quickly share one piece of advice that you wish you were given before getting into the field of marketing. So Karina, how about we start with you?
Great, thank you. Thanks, Ben. So hi, everybody. My name is Karina Top. I lead the integrated digital and media strategy across EMEA at Oracle. So we work across our full suite of cloud offerings. So as you can imagine, lots of different audience groups to understand and know, and lots of ways and means of different buyers' journeys that we need to consider in everything that we do. And in terms of piece of advice, I guess for me, it's interesting that the topic and the study is about the age of agility. I think had I been forewarned about the requirement for such agility and the pace of change when I headed into marketing and started my career, I probably would have taken a little bit of a step back. While not to show my age too much, when I started in my career, LinkedIn did not exist, Twitter did not exist. AI, machine learning, all of these things were unknown phenomenons that were due to take over our world and consume how we engage, how we interact on a daily basis. So be ready for the pace of change, I think, is what I would have liked to know.
Well, that's a great alignment there with the age agility. So thanks for that little pitch there. Jamil, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Morning, everyone. Nice to be speaking to you all. So I'm Jamil Amini. I am a Senior Strategy Director at a Group M agency called Essence, and I look after clients such as Google and BT. Again, similar to Karina, looking after the likes of Cloud, Workspace, and SMB ads. And then for BT as well, looking after both telecoms and the cloud infrastructure side of the business. The question's a brilliant one. I think just through the interactions with LinkedIn and everything else now, I mean, I'm probably of a similar age group to Karina, but she's kind of said all the best parts of that answer. I think if there was something I could have told myself, it was just to become a vacuum. I think, the whole landscape of B2B marketing has changed so much. And as we've seen over the past years, it's actually becoming a lot more aligned to what we see in B2C. And as Ben had mentioned earlier, it's all about marketing to the human part of it. I know we talk about it a lot in B2B, but it's not always successful. Not everyone gets to do it properly. And I think if I just known a lot more of what I know now, I think my whole life would have been a lot more easier. My beard would have been a lot more darker than it currently is.
That's great. So, Jamil, on that, do you think that necessarily B2B is slightly behind where B2C may be in treating kind of potential customers as people?
Yeah, I think, we've always kind of said, look at the organization, look at what they do, look at who they are. And we actually forget that there's a person who is responsible for these decisions in the background. And in B2B, those decisions for certain groups of people could be hugely career altering. And I think it's something that we tend to forget or resonate that, what we're trying to do is help this person succeed in their life and make them a trusted advocate of our clients' businesses. And I think, the more we can kind of resonate to how we're making their lives easier, actually becomes a lot more beneficial for us in the long term. And, making sure that those relationships not only kind of endure, but they grow in the long term. And as we come out to market with new products and new services, those customers have the trust with us. We talk about loyalty, but again, the idea of loyalty in B2B is kind of driven with sidelined by procurement now. Most people are going to go for the cheapest vendor, the kind of most easy accessible vendor with the least interruption to business processes. So what we've got to do is make sure that, we really fight our cause and kind of really look towards what the human aspirations are of that business, and make sure that, when we do market, when we do kind of push collateral forward, it kind of resonates with the people who are there to make those choices.
No, this is great. It's a great point. And Karina, so I mentioned just a minute ago, when we're marketing to people, it doesn't surprise me that, people want to remain anonymous, because I personally, can be quite introverted sometimes, and I don't like to speak to people unless I'm fully kind of prepared. So that being said, is there any particular stat from this research trend that surprised you, and if so, why?
It's funny, yes, you mentioned earlier in the study about the 70% of people want to remain anonymous. I was actually surprised that it wasn't higher. That was surprising to me, and it's because, again, something that you mentioned earlier about, everyday life. We have been, conditioned to engaging online in an anonymous way, how we see fit. We engage with, whether it's from a personal perspective or a business perspective, we engage online in a way that suits us and our needs and how we like to engage across different platforms. So I was actually a little bit surprised that it wasn't higher than 70%. I was fully expecting it to be a little bit more, because of, I guess, how I engage and how the world has changed, and how, even if we think about the changes that have happened in the last year with COVID, and how everyone's working life has become 100% on, well, not everyone's working life, but a lot of us, our working life has become 100% online. We live in a world of Zoom fatigue. So I was a little surprised that, considering the timing of the research, that the 70% wasn't a little bit higher. because of how we're all behaving today and how we're conditioned and how I consume content and how I research brands. So that was actually a little surprising that it wasn't a little bit higher. So I personally fully expect it to continue on an upward trend towards more and more people.
There's a glimmer of hope that it's.
Sorry.
Jamil, was that the same for you? Was that the stat that pulled out for you? Was there anything else in there that surprised you?
Yeah, I think, you know, the kind of the fact that there is, well, like Karina, I did expect it to be a lot higher. And I think, you know, the opposite to that is people just stop their whole journey the minute you kind of start to ask them something or prod them for some information. So on one side, you know, the 70% is a huge stat. I did expect it to be high, but also kind of the 1 in 2 people kind of dropping off at that very early stage. Your Reese example is absolutely brilliant because it's exactly what I would do, probably at the same shop as well. And you know, it's the fact that we've almost kind of eliminated the journey for ourselves before anyone's actually had a chance to learn who we are, what we are. And you know, part of our targeting means that we put certain information out to market at a particular time. But if that person isn't a part of the journey anymore, they've actually lost the part of information which could actually value to them in the future. And it's you know, infinitely harder to kind of win them back, to kind of make sure that we're that they're seeing the right things. And then obviously from a business perspective, it means that we're spending a lot more money to kind of retarget them, up to the point they're thinking, well, hold on, is this person just kind of chasing me? Are they that frustrating salesperson who's just kind of trying to sell me something just to make a commission or something? And that's not really what marketing needs. It should be about more than anything else.
Yeah, marketing's a lot harder than those who do not work in marketing actually realize.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We've got some questions in the chat here. Karina, we've got one for you. It says that this research has showed us that buyers are wanting to research brands anonymously. So how are you thinking about taking buyers on a journey using ungated content?
A really great question. And I think there's actually a lot of elements in that it's actually not just about the content itself. As we all know, and you know, people want to remain anonymous for longer. But just because somebody wants to remain anonymous doesn't mean that there actually aren't things that we can know about them and things that we can't do to learn about them as they continue on their journey. You know, Jamil, you made a really good point there a moment ago about we're marketing to people and we need to remember that. So one of the things as it relates to content that we really as marketers need to make sure we're doing is we're showing our connection on a personal level, our brand values, how they resonate with somebody at a personal level. Because, you know, in general, people work for companies and align themselves with brands that have a shared value and a shared ethos. And that's something that we as brands as well, when we're trying to attract customers, I prefer to say attract versus target, because it really more takes that personal element in terms of we need to show our value. We need to show how we relate to those ideal target personas and our audiences that we're looking to attract into our business, and show how we can align with their values and what it is that we're needing to do. So from a brand perspective, you know, we really need to be considering how do we tell that story? How do we portray our value in that way? And one of the ways that, you know, was really popular, but it resonates is, you know, telling our stories through our customers, and allowing their story to actually be our story. It allows for that greater personal connection and understanding, okay, somebody similar to me has gone through a similar challenge, is facing the same piece, and here's how they were able to get value using that. As I think about the anonymous journey and how we bring people on a journey, there's a lot of data that we as marketers have available to us, but also need to find and make available. You know, intent data has become critically important. And how are we using that? What search terms, what research are we doing to understand our audiences, and how are we using that data to tailor a journey that's more suited to our audiences? The other piece that's really important is, you know, soft personalization, but also self-personalization. How are we enabling a person to go on a journey that they defined based on giving them enough options and a variety of content to enable them to make their own decisions? You know, as you mentioned, Ben, ungated content is really critical. We're giving them the option to engage with a variety of content, not only from a type of content, whether that's a thought leadership podcast, whether it's blogs, video stories, or even how-to videos, you know, some of those thought leadership pieces, giving them enough variety, but with content that adds value, you know, gives them something, gives and offers something of value that they didn't know before, and giving them the options, but then using the tools and technology that are available to us as marketers through AI, machine learning, personalization tools, to then offer up what the next piece of content that might be of value to them is based on their engagement. So there's a lot of ways that we as marketers can bring people on a journey while they remain anonymous. You know, as DemGen marketers, you know, we always have that eye on the lead and the DemGen and how are we building pipeline. There's also ways that we can be really smart as well with tools and technology that are available to us, such as smart gating and engagement-based gating, that as people continue on their journey, repeat visit, and engage with more and more depth, that we offer the form when they're ready and after, you know, I guess content binging and a vast amount of consumption has happened, because you feel they're more ready for a conversion and a conversation based on their engagements that have happened over a period of time, or the depth of their engagement within a sustained smaller period. So there are ways that we can, I guess, facilitate the anonymous journey, but also leverage the tools, technology, the data. Data is so critical, not only from understanding what it is your audience and the buyer wants to engage with is important to them, so that you're developing the right content, but also understanding how they're engaging with content, what content they're engaging with. And then also the channels that they're using to come to you. Is it direct? Is it indirect? What are those indirect channels? And then use that data to enable a personalized journey based on their engagement. So there's a lot of things we can do, but ungated content and making the content available is one element, but we need to use the data in advance to ensure that we've got the right content to meet their needs, but also attract them into the journey.
Yeah, I found it really interesting that you referenced a few times their personalization. And we've seen in previous trends that the size of the buying committees are increasing, and those who are actually influencing the budget holder, you know, they're becoming increasingly important. I mean, Jamil, how have you changed how you're advising clients on targeting approaches, and how is that impacting your personalization objectives and suggestions?
I think it's just kind of leaning into the point that Karina made earlier. It's obviously, you know, we can deliver the content, we can target particular people, but I think it's knowing who to target, and obviously, you know, respecting their needs and their time more than anything else. So obviously working with the clients that we work with at Essence, what we've actually found works really well is we adopt high-level audience personas and finding those people who influence business decisions to actually those people who make the business decisions. And I think that's really helped streamline our processes, make sure that when we do any kind of brand marketing and then obviously DR marketing, we're doing the right thing at the best possible time for that person. So if you just kind of break that down, if we look at decision makers now, they're likely to be the budget holders, as you mentioned there, Ben. They're more likely to be that senior leadership, the C-suite, and they, you know, obviously focused on business growth and shareholder value. And with their typical profile, with the exception of the CIO, they're actually quite disconnected from the application and the implication of purchases. So instead, you know, they've got more buying power. They kind of do a decision by committee, but that's just adding this layer of complexity, which, you know, as you said in your research, just elongates that buying cycle more than it needs to. So, you know, with them guys, it's not about telling them how great our product is. It's about, you know, adopting the kind of the principles that the B2B Institute mentioned in their marketing principles of growth marketing. Be eye-catching for them, you know, have something that resonates on a more emotional level with them, excite them, because these C-suite people are actually going to go and speak to each other, and they want to go and tell each other, oh, look, I saw this great brand. Why don't you as a CIO go talk about it more or learn about it more? And, you know, we find that they're responsive to that kind of signaling media, the white papers that we write, etc. And they buy into the messages, as Karina said, you know, because we've used our other customers as examples. We inspire them, and, you know, it's almost, there's a reduced layer for personalization. And if somebody does give their details to us, we can actually use that, evaluate what the quality of that lead is, and then put them into the funnel. So it's not all complete waste, but it, obviously comes at a different layer. However, when we do start to adopt personalization, then it starts to work with the decision influencers. Now, obviously, these guys tend to be the end users, the kind of the IT professionals, the procurement guys. And that's, somewhere where LinkedIn has helped us a lot, because nowadays there's so many different titles and a lot of these guys do the same job. So, we obviously need to speak to people who know their job implicitly. They know the tools that they have like the back of their hand, and they're always cross-checking and checking what the tools they can do and the capabilities before they actually go and look at a new vendor. So what we want to do is, make sure that we're helping them be responsible. We're not selling them something that they don't have an immediate need for, but we're keeping them warm in the long term through those kind of content pathways, making sure that we're constantly reminding them that we exist there to serve them. So that when they eventually have a new business need, or they've had this moment of epiphany around our business, they can take that to the CIO, who then has to take it to the C-suite. So we start to target them a lot more. We play the long-term game with them, and we see through our comms, etc., that it leads to a much higher qualified relationship that we have with them, and then we're constantly helping them to nudge them towards making that decision in the long term. And then we obviously tailor it for things like names and the verticals that they work with, the industries that they need to know about, etc., and what their challenges are and how we help them overcome that. The final point is actually about the CIO themselves, because they're the only ones who actually sit as a decision maker and an influencer. So there, it's less about education, because we expect the influencers to help them, but it's about being practical, again, inspiring them in a slightly different way to what we would do, a CMO or a HR manager, etc. But making sure that we respect their time. We don't always expect them to sign up to a webinar, but it doesn't mean that we can't give them a summary of what that webinar was about afterwards, and just make sure that if you didn't find it interesting, come to us afterwards, and that's really going to help us to personalize that information for them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned there, something stood out to me, being eye-catching, and also multiple times around nurturing journeys and pathways. I mean, this trend really lends itself to a brand to demand, champions more top of funnel content. I mean, Karina, have you experienced any change in your time at Oracle and the types of content you're distributing now, and how you're distributing budget across brand versus demand?
Absolutely. And I think it's something that, as marketers, we need to always be considering, with the different stages of the funnel, different types of content resonate well in the different stages, whether it's awareness, consideration, through to the buying cycle. But also you need to think about how content works within our different channels and how you're using them in the context of those channels. So absolutely, during my time at Oracle, we have seen shifts to, a variety of brand content at the top, magazines, thought leadership podcasts, customer stories has really played a critical role over the last number of years, and it's only getting more and more emphasis. Because look, from a couple of perspectives, we really want to champion our customers and share their stories and amplify how well they're doing, how they're growing their business. But then we also understand that by doing that, it will also help our brand and our awareness, but also favorability. Favorability is a really, really key piece. We often talk in the funnel about awareness, consideration, and the buying, but for me, there's a critical point between awareness and consideration, and that's that favorability. So what types of content and what message are we putting out there? Content is not a one size fits all, and content is not a one size fits all within the journey either. There is different content needs depending on the audience that you're trying to attract, that you're trying to look to. So for me, if I'm thinking about developers, I'm not going to give them a white paper at the consideration stage of their funnel. They are not interested. They do not want it. So we have seen a continual development and consideration of the types of content. As we think about our audiences, one of the key pieces that we've tried to keep in our mind every time that we're creating is, how will this be of value to them, regardless of the stage of the funnel? So at the top stage of the funnel, at that awareness stage, how will this piece of content will be of value to them? So if it's a blog, what piece of information, what top of the funnel information? Is it a customer story? What is that customer story and how will it resonate in terms of identifying their brand, resonating that way? In terms of as we bring them down, it's how do we make this thought leadership or research? We like to, one of the pieces that we tend to do quite a lot is look to the market, look at what's happening, conduct some research and pull some insights and data together to help inform our customers as to what's happening, what are the future trends, identify something that maybe they didn't know. But then again, as we're bringing them further down, how can we help them? What will be of value? How can we turn that into a how-to guide or a toolkit to help them through their journey or through their discovery phase? So we have seen an evolution. We tailor our content depending on the audience and what we think or know their needs might be based on research. But at the crux of it, it's how can we help them? What do we want them to feel, think, and know after either consuming this, reading it, engaging in it, if it's a hands-on lab for a developer, or is it a white paper? You mentioned, Jamil, about CIO roundtables or webinars. What is it we want them to take away? And that's ultimately the most important piece in any content creation that you can do, is have that in your mind. So you're always checking along the journey of, am I answering that? What am I delivering? And it's really something that we've started to consider more and more over the last number of years, really taking that in our mind, but then also relating it to the journeys. You mentioned a lot, Jamil, as well, about that nurture phase and how we continue to nurture people through their cycle. Ben, you mentioned a 4-month discovery, people drop off. How are we continuing to engage with them, and what is the different content path that we need to bring them on? So what channels work well for the different stages of the funnel? Because again, it's not a one size fits all. And so making sure that our content, our channel, and where somebody is at in the buyer journey work well together, and they meet the need of the consumer, basically.
I think
I love the fact.
Sorry, I was just going to say that there's actually a brilliant point in there. So if you rewind back to last March, absolutely nobody knew what was going to happen. Every single business strategy became obsolete. Yes. And the more we talk about kind of becoming a lot more emotional in our marketing, the boardrooms were becoming a lot more emotional. There's panic everywhere. There's kind of thinking, right, what happens now? And it gave us, not to say we did it in a right way or wrong way, but as marketers, we then got to really understand, well, actually these guys are human, these teams are human. Let's tell them what they need. And it's not about peddling a product anymore. It's literally about survival. It's about kind of recovery. It's about kind of helping them redevelop what their business needs. And you'll find there's so many businesses which have had to pivot because of the pandemic. Having a partner there to help them on that journey has been so critical for them. And that's purely based on what they can learn about us as a business and how we support them in the background.
Absolutely.
I love the fact that it's mentioned, Karina, you said this, asking yourself the question, what's the value they're going to get from every single piece of content? Because I think that's something that's been missing. You just have to scroll through the LinkedIn feed and you can see a lot of B2B content, which is like, this is how great our product is, and this is why we're better than X or Y. But actually, if you're putting the customer first and saying, okay, here's some value, here's something that can help. Not only is it just on LinkedIn, it helps fit in with the ethos why people are on the platform, but just generally, you're trying to help people at a time where everyone's worried about what they're doing and they're worried about tomorrow and what they need. So I love that point. We've got a few minutes left. There's one question I wanted to ask very quickly to both of you, so quick answers. And that is, if you had one tip each for marketing to an unknown buyer, what would that be? Jamil, should we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Probably in the easiest sense is help us help you, right? So obviously the key role for marketing is not just for us to sell more products for our clients, but it's to actually give value from their customers back to the client too. And obviously, by remaining anonymous, it becomes such a more longer drawn out process for us to be able to actually direct you and support you and, not even convert you as a customer there and then, but just to make sure that when you have a need for a particular service or tool, maybe we're that client for you, or maybe we're that kind of vendor for you. But if you're kind of hiding behind all these kind of data walls and privacy walls, etc., by all means, we respect that, but we can only be really efficient for you, kind of, reduce your resource allocation, reduce your actual budget spends and kind of what you look when you start to look for a tool by just telling us what you need. And I think the sooner you become unanonymous to us, makes both your life easier as a customer and our life easier as someone who's there to help you.
Fantastic. Karina, is there anything else you'd like to share?
So for me, as marketers to an unknown buyer, I think the number one thing that we need to start with, because it should inform everything that we're doing, is the data. Learn as much as we possibly can about the unknown buyer while respecting their wish to be anonymous as we can. So do your market research, see what's happening with that audience, look for trends, and then use intent data, AI, and machine learning to improve your journey, improve the journey that those buyers will go on, and enable that self-personalization. If you do the research up front, you're more likely to have content that will resonate with those buyers through the various stages of the funnel, and use that data. Data. I never thought that I would say as a marketer that it's data. You need look to the data, and the data will help you inform the appropriate strategy.
I think the people who watch this back at LinkedIn hearing you say that will probably laugh, because they know it's what I say a lot as well, given my background in data. So yeah, and I love that. So leverage data, give yourself some clues to help with the anonymous kind of buying journey. And also, Jamil, a great point. And I love this as a tagline, help us help you. I think that's fantastic. And I think with that, we're at time. I just want to say a massive thank you to both of you. Super interesting. I hope everyone on this webinar managed to take a few things away from that, and it's going to help you, help us help you. There you go. So brilliant. Thank you guys. And I'd like to say have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.